Hey there guys. So I thought I'd bring back the fantasy fight series that I did a few months ago on my channel, and I thought I'd do Wladimir Klitschko versus Oleksandr Usyk. So obviously after Usyk has moved up to the heavyweight division, and after he beat Joshua twice, this fight has been discussed on some boxing forums, and I've seen a video on this fantasy fight, so I thought I'd give my take on it. So obviously these guys are both obviously they've both won world titles at heavyweight. Wladimir Klitschko was heavyweight champion for 11 years, and I consider him the greatest heavyweight of all time, and I think he's got the best resume of any heavyweight of all time. And obviously Usyk is fairly new to the heavyweight division. He's only had 4 fights in the heavyweight division, and he is the unified champion already. And he could be undisputed if he beats Fury. So, obviously he is a former cruiserweight champion and a pound for pound great. So, this fight's really interesting. And obviously when you break down fantasy fights, you've got to look at each guy's resume, and you've got to see if they fought anyone with a similar style. So, if we look at Usyk's resume, the guy he's fought that is most similar to Wladimir is obviously Anthony Joshua, but it's not exactly an ideal comparison, is it? Because Joshua is, for lack of a better term, he is a Poundland Wladimir. He has nowhere near the type of boxing skill. Joshua is just a stiff, conventional boxer. He doesn't have the jab that Wladimir has. He doesn't have the speed. He doesn't have the stamina. He doesn't have the powers of recovery. And he's just nowhere near as good. He's levels below Wladimir. And obviously Usyk, in the first fight he beat him very convincingly. I thought he won 10 rounds in that fight, and Joshua struggled to get into it. Obviously in the second fight, Joshua gave Usyk more problems. He won a couple more rounds. I think I gave Joshua about 4 rounds in that fight. I'm not sure if that fight was Joshua improving or Usyk regressing, because I thought Usyk's accuracy was much better in the first fight than the second. But I digress. Obviously Joshua started to press the action more in the second fight. He started to hit the body more, and obviously that gave Usyk a lot of problems because Usyk's shown vulnerabilities to the body before. But all in all, I thought it was a clear 116-112 win for Usyk. And Usyk has shown that he can deal with the size and reach of these guys. He's obviously beaten Joshua, and he's beaten some guys in the amateurs. He beat Joe Joyce, for example, and pretty much schooled him in the World Series of Boxing. So Usyk has shown that he can deal with the height and the reach and the weight of these guys. Obviously some people like to say he struggled with Derek Chisora, but I thought he won that fight clearly. I gave him 10 rounds in that fight. And obviously Chisora, he's a guy who he makes it a rough night for anyone. No one really looks good against Derek Chisora because he fouls. He utilizes all the dirty tactics to try and find a way to get himself a win against these guys who are much better than him. And that's how he makes those guys look awkward. So it's not really a surprise that Usyk, who is obviously a similar size to Chisora in terms of height and reach, had a difficult fight against him. It's obviously a lot easier for a guy like Fury to outbox Chisora from the outside with his reach and make it an easy night. So, but yeah, Usyk has shown that he can deal with the height and the weight and the reach of these guys that he's fought so far. Now if you look at Wladimir's resume, and you try and find guys who are similar to Usyk, I'm going to pick out Sultan Ibragimov, I'm going to pick out Ruslan Chagayev, and Chris Bird. So all of those guys were southpaws. All of those guys were heavyweight champions, and Ibragimov and Chagayev especially had some similarities to Usyk. So obviously both of those guys were European fighters, Eastern Europeans, and they utilized the same European fundamentals, you know, tight guard, good movement, good southpaw jab. They made it very, they were very good at outboxing opponents, and Chagayev was quite a good counterpuncher as well. So those guys, in some ways, I wouldn't say they're as good as Usyk, but they are similar because of their European fundamentals, and they're obviously southpaws. And both guys were. Ibragimov was a fairly similar size to Usyk, and Chagayev was just a bit smaller. So, and Chris Bird in there as well. Chris Bird was obviously a southpaw heavyweight champion, and he was a similar size to Usyk as well. And Wladimir dominated all of these guys. In the first fight against Chris Bird, he was an aggressive counterpuncher, and he completely dominated that fight. I think he knocked Chris Bird down twice, and it was an easy win. In his fight against Sultan Ibragimov, he completely outboxed Sultan Ibragimov, and he won a clear decision. And it was a very good performance, just outboxed him from the outside. And then in his fight against Chagayev, that was a domination. Chagayev didn't win a round, and Wladimir convincingly outboxed him from the outside and made Chagayev retire in his corner. So Wladimir always showed that he was very good against southpaws, and especially southpaws of Usyk's size and dimensions. He obviously fought Tony Thompson as well, who was another southpaw, but I don't think he was on the same level as those guys personally. But yeah, Wladimir always showed that he was very good against southpaws. And he was always adept at outboxing these guys from the outside, and yeah, he absolutely dominated all of the guys I just mentioned. So I think he would do the same to Usyk, not as convincingly as he beat those guys, but I think Usyk would struggle to get past the reach of Wladimir. I don't see Usyk piecing Wladimir up like he did with Joshua. I think Wladimir would be able to outbox Usyk from the outside with his great jab and his right hand, and he was very good at measuring the distance. And I would go with Wladimir on points. I don't think a stoppage would happen. I think both guys have very, very good defense, and Usyk doesn't really have a lot of power at heavyweight. If anyone got stopped, I think it would be Usyk, but I think Usyk he's obviously a very good defensive fighter, and I think he would last the distance, like Ibragimov did. So yeah, I'd go Wladimir Klitschko on points. Usyk would have his success. He'd land some body shots, and he'd land some headshots every now and again, but I think Wladimir would outbox Usyk, and from the outside, and he'd win, you know, sort of 160 and 112 decision. So yeah, let me know what you guys think about this fight. If you want me to cover any more fantasy fights, leave them in the comments, and yeah, thanks for watching. God bless.